Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a deeply complex, deeply alarming story that has serious implications for international security, energy, diplomacy, and the human condition. A drone strike by Ukraine reportedly hit a Russian nuclear power plant valued at $7 billion, sending shockwaves across the globe. Putin is furious, Zelenskyy warns of escalation, and now the world is watching closely. Let's unpack what has happened, why it matters, and what might come next. The first reports emerged when Ukrainian forces released statements claiming they had carried out drone strikes targeting Russian nuclear infrastructure. According to them, the target was a high-value nuclear power plant somewhere in Russian-controlled territory. The estimated worth of the facility, $7 billion, underscores both its strategic importance and the magnitude of what is at stake. Immediately, the Kremlin condemned the attack as a reckless act of sabotage. Putin's response was swift, harsh, and ominous. He accused Ukraine of endangering nuclear safety, threatening regional stability, and invited severe repercussions. Moscow insisted that any damage to nuclear reactors or cooling systems could lead to catastrophic fallout, both environmental and humanitarian. Zelenskyy, meanwhile, did not deny the operation, but cautioned that Ukraine would continue to defend its sovereignty and respond to Russian aggression. He emphasized the need for international attention and assistance, warning that escalation could spiral if nuclear facilities become pawns in this war. International actors reacted with concern. European capitals urged restraint, called for investigations, and demanded guarantees of nuclear safety. The IAEA was summoned to assess whether any plant safety protocols had been compromised. Some voices called it a war crime, others a necessary blow. Amidst this, civilians near the power plant zone reportedly experienced panic, with fears of radiation leaks, though independent confirmation of damage has been limited. Russia issued statements that emergency cooling systems remained intact and that reactors were not compromised. Officials claimed the drones were intercepted before they could cause major harm. However, satellite imagery analysts and open-source investigators started poring over before and after photos in search of blast damage, scorch marks, or structural compromise. To date, results are mixed. Some inconclusive signs of damage to peripheral infrastructure, but no verified nuclear core damage. Ukraine, for its part, argued that only non-nuclear parts of the facility were targeted. They claimed the strike was aimed at logistical or power distribution elements feeding military operations. Ukrainian officials said that many Russian military assets are co-located or depend upon power produced by this plant, thus making it a legitimate military target under wartime law. Some human rights watchers warned of the slippery slope this represents. If nuclear power plants are deemed acceptable military targets, risk increases dramatically. The potential for collateral damage, radiation leaks, and long-lasting environmental harm could be immense. Even minor damage to cooling systems or containment could have effects that persist for decades. Russian media showed images of burned equipment, shattered windows in nearby buildings, and smoke rising from some auxiliary units. They claimed that the plant's outer security perimeter had been breached, but photographs of more critical infrastructure remained scarce or heavily redacted in official releases. Ukraine denied that civilians were harmed or that radiation levels rose beyond normal background. They invited international inspectors to verify their claims. In several press briefings, they emphasized that the drone strike avoided sensitive reactor internals and focused on supply lines and energy transmission nodes used by Russian military installations. Meanwhile, analysts speculated on the type of drones used. Some suggested long-range strike drones, possibly loitering munition drones, were capable of penetrating Russian air defenses, Others pointed to swarm tactics. The exact drone model remains unconfirmed publicly, adding to uncertainty about who, aside from Ukraine, may have assisted or supplied the technology. Putin used the strike to rally nationalist sentiment. He accused Western nations of providing Ukraine with drones and technology that allow such attacks, calling them complicit in nuclear provocation. Russia's military declared states of readiness around nuclear facilities, increasing security around plants, establishing buffer zones, and stepping up air defense protocols. Zelenskyy reiterated that Ukraine's actions are defensive. He asked international organizations to pressure Russia to stop using nuclear facilities as shields for military operations. He also warned that failing to do so could make nuclear facilities targets, raising risks for all. Diplomatic fallout was widespread. Countries in Europe expressed concern about becoming collateral victims of nuclear incidents. Neighboring states even considered emergency preparedness measures, monitoring radiation, updating civil defense protocols, stockpiling iodine tablets. The European Commission called for transparency in reporting any incidents or damage. The UN Security Council held an emergency session. Russia accused Ukraine of violating international laws and conventions protecting nuclear installations. Ukraine's representatives argued that Russia has already violated treaties by placing military assets in proximity to nuclear plants and using infrastructure as dual use, civilian and military. Legal scholars were divided. Some pointed out protocols of the Geneva Conventions requiring extra care for civilian installations, particularly those with nuclear risk. Others argued that when civilian installations are used for military purposes, they may lose some protection. But even those more sympathetic to Ukraine cautioned that targeting nuclear infrastructure is an escalation with extreme risk. Ecological experts weighed in. The potential consequences of a radiation leak, even a minor one, are grave. Contamination of water tables, soil, long-term health effects, displacement of population, damage to flora and fauna. Risk is magnified because nuclear accident consequences scale non-linearly. A small failure can cascade into large catastrophe. In the coming days, much depends on what the independent inspections reveal. If it turns out that reactor core or cooling systems were damaged, international condemnation could intensify. Sanctions could be broadened, legal claims opened, and perhaps even war crime investigations. Alternatively, if damage is limited to peripheral systems, Ukraine might receive tacit acceptance from some quarters as having acted within the margins of war. Russia, for its part, may use this as justification for retaliatory strikes deeper into Ukrainian territory, or escalations around multiple nuclear facilities. There is concern this could open a dangerous chapter where nuclear power plants are de facto military assets, with all the risks for miscalculation and accidental catastrophe. Media coverage has been intense. Opinion pieces point out the paradigm shift. Modern warfare increasingly involves nuclear risk. Drones make remote strike possible, but testing the boundaries of acceptable risk. Some analysts suggest that nuclear plants have become strategic pressure points, used by both sides not only for energy supply but for deterrence and political leverage. Public sentiment in Ukraine seems cautiously supportive. Many citizens see such strikes as necessary countermeasures given Russia's strategy of using energy dependence and infrastructure to dominate. At the same time, Ukrainian civil organizations call for utmost care to avoid ecological disasters that could hurt their own people. Globally, there is fear among environmental groups. Many demand stronger enforcement of nuclear safety conventions, perhaps new international frameworks limiting military operations around nuclear power plants. There is discussion of potential new UN treaties or amendments to existing ones to prevent this kind of risk. The role of satellite imagery, open source intelligence, and citizen journalism has been central. Independent analysts have traced heat signatures, smoke plumes, and infrastructure damage via satellite. These findings sometimes support or contradict official claims, but transparency remains low in contested areas. Regardless of the immediate facts, this episode raises deeper questions. What counts as legitimate military target when civilian infrastructure doubles for military uses? How is proportionality judged when risk includes potential nuclear disaster? How can international law adapt to drone warfare and technological asymmetries? One cannot ignore the psychological effects. The fear that nuclear plants may become battlegrounds introduces a whole new level of dread. Regulators, governments, and the public are forced into constant vigilance over radiation risks, emergency planning, worst case scenarios. There is also the question of consequence if things go wrong. If a reactor meltdown or coolant system failure occurs, whether by design, accident, or miscalculation, the fallout would extend far beyond borders. Windborne radiation, contaminated water, displacement, and long-term health risks. It could rival historical disasters. For now, Ukraine maintains it is not seeking nuclear catastrophe. Zelenskyy keeps asserting that strikes are precise, aimed at legitimate military targets, and that international norms must be observed. He appeals to world leaders. Condemn Russian militarization of civilian infrastructure, support Ukraine's right to resist, ensure nuclear safety commitments are upheld. Russia continues to position itself as victim, warning of dire consequences, launching propaganda campaigns, drawing comparisons to past nuclear disasters. Putin portrays the strike as proof of Ukrainian aggression and Western complicity. Russian media amplifies images of damage, fear, and menace to rally domestic support and justify retaliation. Outside, international organizations have begun independent measurement of radiation in areas downwind. So far, no serious deviations have been confirmed, but scientists caution that some forms of radiation may be undetectable with cursory instruments or appear later. Monitoring continues. The costs are high regardless of physical damage. The political cost, trust eroded further, diplomatic ties pushed to breaking points. The legal cost, potential for claims, documentation, international scrutiny. The moral cost, setting precedents for risks, taking with nuclear sites. In the long term, this incident may reshape conflict norms. Militaries, policymakers, strategists will scrutinize doctrines for attacking dual-use infrastructure. International law might be pressed to set clearer prohibitions, observance mechanisms, more robust treaties. As always, accountability matters. If violations occurred, intentional targeting of non-military nuclear components, failure to safeguard civilians, those responsible must be held to account. Similarly, claims of falsified damage or exaggeration must be examined honestly to preserve truth. What happens next could determine whether this conflict crosses into a new, risk-laden phase. If similar strikes occur again, or if nuclear facilities become regular targets or shields, the disaster potential multiplies. For now, the world watches. Will there be verification of damages? Will Ukraine be forced to retract or modify strategy? Will Russia take disproportionate action, endangering civilians? And will international actors finally agree on stricter norms for protecting nuclear infrastructure in war? This is more than a single event. It's a test of whether humanity has the systems, institutions, and willpower to manage the intersection of modern warfare and nuclear risk. Because once nuclear safety is compromised, there is no turning back. Thank you for staying with me through this breakdown. Let me know what you think. Was this a justified strike or a dangerous escalation? How should international law respond? Leave your thoughts in the comments. If you found this useful, please like, share, subscribe. Until next time, stay informed and take care.